not too long ago, I wrote actually a Facebook post. Hey, this is for an upcoming vlog. What is the worst things that people have said to you when you were in a time of mourning? And man, the responses made me just like, I have to do this video soon. There's so many people that have been affected by just horrible, negative, unwanted comments while they were mourning a loved one. So this video is for you guys. Before I could even get to what not to say when someone is mourning, we have to give just general, basic education on what grief is, what mourning is. Interesting enough, there are many different types of grief. What I looked up, there was like about 10 or more. So you could look that up for yourself. I am going to speak about 4. Number 1, there is a grief called a mask grief. Think of a mask. Ever since that loved one died, they started acting different, or they started getting like a physical symptom or a physical illness ever since that person died. So have you ever seen someone that ever since their loved one died, they do not act the same, they don't talk the same, they're showing more negative behaviors? Now, the interesting thing about a masked grief, the person displaying this type of grief, they do not see the connection. They don't see that I'm acting this way because so-and-so died. I don't know how to deal right now, and this is why I'm acting and talking this way. They don't see the connection. A lot of the times this is unconscious. Another type of grief is called cumulative grief. This one is really sad. This one is when you have multiple deaths within your family or just people that you know, and it's all happening within the same time frame. I knew of someone, their uncle died. Then the next 2 months, a cousin died. Then that same year, they had a miscarriage. Then the next year, their brother died. Like, it's just back-to-back deaths. This one is very, very stressful because you don't really have enough time to grieve one death at a time before the next thing happens. The other type of grief is called normal grief. Now, what do we mean by normal grief? This type of grief resembles what you would think a typical grief would look like. Now, this is what I mean. That's a person who they're grieving, they feel down, they're sad, but they are moving toward accepting the death of that loved one. They are functional. What do I mean by functional? They're able to wake up in the morning, they're able to go to work, they're able to do their duties within the day. And what you see in normal grief is there is a gradual decline of the intensity of grief that person is feeling. Now, this next type of grief I'm going to talk a little bit more on because it's very interesting and in many ways it's unacceptable to society. Let me explain. This type of grief is called disenfranchised grief. Here's an example of disenfranchised grief. That's when a pet dies. That's when an ex-spouse dies or a co-worker dies. Others might not acknowledge the importance of that loss. This is also the category of someone in your family who's experiencing dementia. They're physically still there, but you know in your heart, that's not my loved one. They're not acting like themselves. So in a way, it's a death. Or let's say it's a miscarriage. A miscarriage, I could just see like most people don't understand miscarriages. And since they don't understand miscarriages, when there is a miscarriage, they have no idea what to say, but yet they say anything that just pops up to their minds. And most of the time it is so insensitive. And I'm very passionate about this because I've worked with individuals who have gone through miscarriages. Another type of death that goes into disenfranchised grief would be a suicide. Think about it. Most people don't know what to say within a suicide. Most people don't like to even acknowledge that that happens in our world today. Yeah, suicide is huge right now. And unfortunately, if it's not your family, it's the neighbor's family that's dealing with it. I'm sure one of you watching have witnessed a suicide in your family. So you have outsiders not knowing what to say with a suicide because it's a different type of grief. What do you say? Sorry for your loss, but it wasn't really a loss because they took their own life. It's a lot. So again, there's more types of grief. You have delayed grief, you have chronic grief, and it's important to know that sometimes grief can turn to depression. When you notice that you cannot function, you're not getting out of bed, you don't want to eat, you're not going to work, and you're not able to move forward and accept the loss, you might need to speak to a professional, you might need to speak to a counselor, grieve through that process, and get healing, whatever that looks like for you. And let me tell you this, in this holiday season, it gets harder. I'm not gonna lie to you. You were with your family for Thanksgiving, you're with your family making plans for Christmas and New Year's. It gets harder during the holiday season, even if that loved one died years ago, because it's a reminder. All my family is here, but so-and-so's missing. Oh yeah, that's right, they passed. It's like a constant reminder. So my biggest thing to you who are still mourning the death of a loved one, and you're now in this holiday season, be patient with yourself. If you need a moment to cry, cry. If you need a moment to separate yourself from your family, separate yourself from your family. Take a moment for yourself. There is nothing wrong with self-care and boundaries. Now, this is just part one of what I want to get into. Part two, we're going to now list out what not to say to a person who is grieving.